Hello everyone, and welcome to this Kingdom Death Monsters video for the assembly and painting of Allister. He's one of the 4 base starting survivors from the core game, and, well, yeah, that's pretty much it. Allister, like the other 3, is a character that is carried over in a lot of future models or alternate models. For example, I've recently done the unboxing for the Death High version. The assembly here is really simple. The earlier models were very simple. His shoulder did need to get puttied, but otherwise he was just a few pieces. Like, this is so few pieces, I would not have put this in a future... I just wouldn't have recorded it for future videos, honestly. So, on to the painting. Allister starts pale as can be. Because he is so pale in the artwork, he often looks gray. I did not manage to get this across very well, in my opinion. Like, his skin and the highlighting from it does not come out well, in my opinion. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. I think the other 3 came out a lot better. I ended up doing the lightest one first, and then the darkest one last, which I believe was Zachary, but we'll get back to that. Allister actually ended up finished for a long time before I even started on the second one. But again, not really an important factor here. Just lots of flesh to be painted, very palely. This was back when I'm still being very careful with these models, thus this is actually taking longer than it would normally, and why I'm using a smaller brush. Also, oh boy, is there many years, like, this model was assembled shortly after getting the game, and painted probably a year later. I don't think I worked on any of them, the starting survivors that is, until after finishing all the monsters. So then I use a extremely light gray, basically an off-white for the cloth. I do this for all 4 of the models. This is the same color that I use whenever I want something to be white at the end of the model. It's very useful, especially after ink washed. I'm still a person that is just bathed in null oil or whatever equivalency, which I really need to learn to not do that with flesh, because it doesn't turn out too well. For correct, I remembered to do that with one of them eventually, but I don't really remember, as, you know, they just kind of blur together in my memory. We'll get to that whenever I get to that one, assuming that one actually happened. But I know I did the Brewfest Aya, and that didn't turn out too well, but not nearly as bad. So, the hair is a mid-range gray, because they all have very anime-ish hair, with or at least 2 of them do, with a gray, not a silver, not a aging gray, like a gray like this kind of gray, and a blue, and then there's also red and brown, which usually correspond to the randomized cards that come with the game, and the tokens, which is probably the reason why. Yay! So, the lantern's being painted a yellow, because it is primarily light, and whatever kind of thing is, you know, the equivalency of the paper that would be covering it. A darker gray for the stone. I originally had the base on camera, but as you can see, poof, done. Some black for the actual metal frame that makes up the lantern. I don't know what makes up the interior of a Kingdom Death lantern. These things are naturally made. Like, they just exist. It's weird. If people would like me to go over some lore or setting stuff of Kingdom Death, I'm more than willing to dive deeper into that. Again, this is me being a lot more careful than I usually am. This is, in fact, the brush that, if I'm correct, I would use for very fine details, and that's why this takes a lot longer. Yeah. Oh well. And then on to the attempt to do the eyes of the original survivors being caked in ink. I think I actually did this with an ink wash for the later models and then just purposely let it pool under the eyes. But yeah, it was more messy here than not. As you can see, this time the brush is being used appropriately, and then I forgot that the lanterns have cloth on them for whatever weird reason. I still don't know. It's like, again, a lot of weird things in this setting, including the fact that the starting survivors are monsters. All the survivors are. So onwards to the ink wash, where it brings out a lot of the details. Now, in my opinion, the flesh turns out a lot better to start with here. In terms of the ink wash, it's when the highlight gets added that it's just like, okay, it's kind of messy now, at least on this one. And for the hair and the cloth, it's almost a necessity to bring out the details, because so much just gets lost when it's just a simple, singular color, and I don't really like painting things in a let's paint it black and then dry brush it on unless I'm purposely doing my darker paint scheme, which is not what I want to do for this game. I did it for the back half, the literal physical back half of the Gorm, and would do it for other similar things where I'm doing an object source lighting basically as part of the dynamic of the model itself, not just lighting up part of the model like I do towards the end of this one. So it ends up some really weird kind of stuff of just like, yeah. But that's why I drown my models in null oil, or again, whatever equivalent, black ink. I just feel like it brings the details out later better. I paint the colors for the base coat intentionally with the idea that that's going to happen, and thus highlighting makes it stand out more. I don't know why I did the second coat, honestly. It just did not help with the flesh. And speaking of the flesh, here's me trying to dry brush the flesh white. I still have yet to wrap my head around the right color to use for dry brushing my already lightest skin pigment. But yeah, if anybody's got any suggestions for that for future models, feel free to mention that. But it also ends up being what's used for the cloak, and I believe for the hair, because it was already a light gray. But yeah, this thing's messy, but hey, whatever. It looks better than it did when it wasn't painted. And yeah, here's a bit of a mess up on the trying to get the lantern to not look like crud, but it ends up looking like crud. Highlight of the base, because I still want it to look a bit like it's, a stone ground, even though I'm still going to paint it to look like the game piece. The stone shard, hey, that came out nice. Oh, guess I did do the hair a different color, which would have been the same gray that I used for the base coat of the cloth. And then some object light source painting, which also is the highlighting for the lantern itself. This came out really well, in my opinion. I've had a lot of fun doing this with Kingdom Death Monster. The model that I've had the most time to work with, or the most effort, was the Lonely Tree. But that's the entire model. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, feel free to press the like button. If you think somebody else will enjoy this, feel free to share this video. If you didn't like this video, go ahead and press the dislike button. I won't mind, but please leave a constructive comment as to why. Even if that's the model came out garbage. That's okay. But please, again, constructive comments would be great. Also, feel free to comment in general, such as, would you like to hear me go over lore or gameplay or other models painted for Kingdom Death Monster, or anything else along those lines. Still working on those detailed overviews. Got a lot of unboxing videos to catch up on first, and again, that hunt video is 4 hours of footage. So one thing at a time. And if you'd like to see more like this, be it more painting videos, my unboxing videos, my board game overviews, all three of which I do for Kingdom Death, and anything else you might want to see on this channel, feel free to subscribe. Regardless, thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.